Hey, good Saturday morning, everybody. It is now but 1:13, 11:32 in the morning here in the East, which means it is 8:32 in Oakland. And I want to attack this right off the bat, right between your eyes and mine collectively, okay? Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred said recently, feel sorry for the fans in Oakland, I really do. But for the city of Oakland to point fingers at John Fisher, it's not fair. And he's right. He is absolutely right. So I'm going to stick my mouth in the head of the lion that fans have created to want to bite John's head off and say, you really ought to want to bite Oakland government's head off. And there's a specific and gigantic set of reasons for this. And I create a prepared statement to explain it. And it's called simply that Oakland lost the A's to Las Vegas because of its government, period. The Oakland A's are deep in the planning for a move to Las Vegas, as you know, following in the footsteps of the Oakland Raiders, who are now called the Las Vegas Raiders. The reasons for the move, and they are plural, both the A's and the Raiders from Oakland, Las Vegas, are due to one factor: Oakland's government. What's wrong with Oakland's government has nothing to do with the amount of public money available and everything to do with one fact, folks. One, Oakland has forgotten how to form a process by which in its operation would allow the construction of and agreements to do the construction of large-scale public-private facilities, be they stadiums, ballparks, or convention centers. Oakland has none of those that we have built going all the way back to Bob Nahas and the original Coliseum, with only the Coliseum recreation of the arena, as I call it, in 1998, to stand as one shining example of what Oakland government can do when it has its act together or decides to do so. But we don't have a new ballpark or convention center. We've never tried to build one, or stadium, nothing. And that's why we don't have them, Oakland's government. In the case of Howard Terminal, even though the California legislation called SB293 Skinner, remember the law that bestowed tax increment financing powers on the area of the A's ballpark, had a call for a public organization. It sure did. It would have caused a formal process to be installed. The city of Oakland never used it. I repeat, the city of Oakland never used it. The law calls for the establishment of something called a public financing authority. Now, for those of you purists who might say, well, that's just to float the bond, and you would be correct. Look, when the Raiders returned to Oakland, our original Oakland-Alameda County Joint Powers Authority was formed for a similar reason. But smartly, Ignacio de la Fuente worked with Ezra Rapport to have it expanded into a true stadium authority. So that, and the reason that was done is because, hey, look, we had to pay for the bond issue since the PSL sales didn't go well. And so De La Fuente's reasoning was, it's our money, so we should operate the Coliseum properly. The Coliseum at that point didn't have the staff it used to, including an architect. Yeah, the Coliseum used to have its own architect. So when you think about what the Oakland Roots are trying to do in terms of building what I call a temple of a stadium outside the Coliseum when they should be inside, keep note that if the Oakland Coliseum had its own architect, the architect can make that call on behalf of the organization and on behalf of the facility. But I digress. That should be inside, not outside. That's a huge mistake. Flooding. Now let me continue. What's the formal process that I refer to? All right. It's basically like this. It's a series of monthly meetings, all on Howard Terminal as an agenda item within this public financing authority as called for by SB293 Skinner. And if we had that would have assured that we have the series of approvals for documents and also recordings of what we've done. A checklist, a public checklist of where we were, all the way down to eventual approval, and then we pass it to the city council. Okay. Nothing like that. All right. And so, as I said, the authority is at its heart the organization that would float the bonds to build the ballpark in this instance, right? It would have a monthly meeting structure that allows for regular project updates, open forum, closed session meetings, and agenda items on legal documents and other project-related concerns. By being able to set the agenda for the development of Howard Terminal Ballpark, the project moves along at a faster and more organized pace. What we have right now, one reporter commented that we didn't meet certain deadlines, all right? But that's media focus. The deadlines were not met because there was no process to make sure documents were prepared in a timely fashion to meet or even surpass those deadlines. And there was no place to go to for the public to say, hey, we have this deadline coming up. Where are the agreements regarding, for example, how we work with unions, or how we handle or who handles such matters as electricity? All of these documents that have to do with the formation of an operation to build a stadium were being worked on within the Oakland City Administrator's office, but you had no idea where they were on them because they were never called for by a public body. Okay? So you might have documents, and I don't know because I don't know the list of what they have completed. All I know is that they're behind schedule. But my point is, we would be able to see what was needed in a checklist, what we had to pass as an authority, and then where we were. And we would have had a constant monthly update. That's what you do. It would have been organized. Right now, what we have is disorganization. And in disorganization, what you wind up with is over politicization. And that is the problem. Oakland is disorganized, and the disorganization constantly leads to over politicization. And that is why we don't get these large scale projects done, let alone off the ground. Look at Coliseum City. Another example, okay? Another example, all right? The Howard Terminal project was supposed to be a tax increment financing zone, right? So why wasn't one started? So Rebecca keeps saying we found the money. You didn't do tax increment financing, Rebecca. And these elected officials must get themselves out of the way. And Rebecca proves my point by getting on Twitter all the time and always referring to something that she was involved in. I get that. She wants credit for what she's done. She was the one that sounded the horn initially to say, hey, let's get the WNBA in here. I get that. Fine. But at some point, you've got to know when to take yourself out of the equation, let alone realize that maybe you're part of the problem in the equation. Okay? So, as I've said, with no schedule to move things along because Howard Terminal lacked the process and organization, political opposition had time to catch wind of the project's growing popularity because of media coverage, right? And once they did, they took natural advantage of the fact that there was no formal process, and so they tried to install one of their own. That was obvious in the call for a public vote on Howard Terminal. That was done by the opponents. It shouldn't have been the opponents at all. All right. A normal process would have had the Howard Terminal Ballpark Financing Authority in charge of all document approvals before the city council had final say on the project. The point is, we would not have given the public a half-baked plan. In reality, that's what the Oakland City Council was poised to do with a call for that public vote. In Las Vegas and Nevada, they have the Las Vegas Stadium Authority. But that's not the only example of a stadium authority. There's the Virginia Stadium Authority. There's all number of examples of stadium authorities, including our Joint Powers Authority, in history. We have the examples laid bare before us. We didn't follow them. in the context of how we're terminal, and yet we expected success. That is the definition of insanity. All right, straight out. Straight out. The point is, building a major league ballpark is about process more than deadlines. Having a process allows you to meet the deadlines, but without one, you're not going to meet your deadlines at all. That's why Oakland consistently fails at building new ballparks, stadiums, and convention centers. There's no process at all. And then you have media people who have no experience at this issuing their opinions about it, and then talking to other media people rather than anybody else who's done this sort of thing before. And so what happens is that this echo chamber of ignorance continues. And I said it just like that. Okay. There's only one person I know of who stepped outside that, and that's Casey Pratt of ABC. That's why he's a friend, and that's why I give him high marks, because he realizes what he does and what he knows, and he realizes that there are other people out there, in this instance, me, who've been there far longer than he has. And so he has no problem asking the question. Doesn't mean he has to agree with me, but at least he acknowledges that. That's far better than anybody else in a very, very, very long time. And I've been at this since 1987, when the City of Oakland hired me as an intern. All right. So that's what I wanted to say for this segment. I'll be back with another one. But look, and I'm going to say this again, I'm going to flash this up here, and I don't care how you feel about it. He's right. All right. And good for him for calling it out. Good for him for calling it out. It was the same problem with the project for the Raiders. We had no formal process. And I'm going to say this again before I leave, because I'm going to make a video about it, but I want to hammer home. The Oakland Roots must follow a process and stop being political and do things within the framework of the JPA, and then ask themselves one question. What's wrong with our plan to be outside the Coliseum? It speaks volumes for what their intentions are, because it's outside rather than inside first, A. B, it's in the middle of a property that is plagued by our sea level rise problem. You know what that is? That whole area of East Oakland, and I say that whole area, I'm talking about not just the Coliseum, but eastward, all the way up to International Boulevard, and then down to the Oakland Airport in the opposite direction, from 66th Avenue to 98th, has been pointedly targeted as a big problem to be underwater within 30 years. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be completely underwater permanently, but some estimates have the underwater problem by as much as 72 inches. Now, in a normal situation of a day, you might drive down there and say, it looks okay to me. But when it starts raining, that's when you see the difference. Water washing up all over the streets in some areas, like, for example, down by 81st. That will plague the call that the Roots have for the outside stadium, because that call does not have its own drainage plan. And if it had its own drainage plan, that would call for digging up concrete. You can't just out a field, design it, doesn't even look like it's elevated at all, and say have it here. That's not how it works. So what's going to happen? You mark my words, if this is allowed to go through, they're going to wind up with another drainage problem. They're going to wind up with a field that's waterlogged, and they're going to wonder what happened. I'm telling you what happened. I'm telling you what happened. The better approach is to get an architect and have a configuration created for inside the Coliseum. And when they say we've done that, I haven't seen it. They didn't present it to the public. And that's something else too. If you're going to say you've done something, you have to be prepared to show that you've done it at this place. You can't just say you did it, because there's always going to be folks like me around that say, show me that you did, because we don't have the time to waste. Soccer needs to be a part of Oakland's future, but you don't need to go into Oakland's future on your own, poised to mess things up because you think you know it better than other people. That is oh so Oakland. All right. And I'm telling you, you're going to mess up. There's an organization to work within. There's a facility, a structure to use. Use it. We can modify it. Oakland, and you're looking at the only person in Oakland's history to start a sports commission successfully. There have been others who tried and failed. The previous head of the Oakland Convention's Visitors Bureau, if I can digress for a second, said she was going to start one under Mayor Schaaf. I offered to help her. She didn't listen. Said, we got this, Zinni. What did she do? She got nothing. And then she quit early and went to D.C. What did that do for Oakland? Nothing. It was about her ambitions and not getting something done. Okay? So, Oakland roots, you need to be in the Coliseum. We can drudge up the old plan, if you will, and make it not so old anymore by having bleachers on the east side brought forward to make a more intimate setting. All that can be done. We must work to preserve the Coliseum for one specific reason. It exists at a time when sports events are economic development generators. Why? Because thanks to the internet and television, they are marketers for cities more than they've ever been before. And you want to blow that? So there we are. Don't do this alone, and do not follow a politician. In the Oakland case, going back to the roots, where is the city staff member you're working with? Right? Where is the sports czar? Where is the economic development czar? Don't see them. Okay? Who do you have advocating for you that's not an elected official? Think about it. Because by nature of the fact that you would have an elected official singularly working on your behalf means you're in trouble. Why? You don't know where that person's career is going to go or what's going to happen to them, and your fate will rest with them. That's stupid. I'm just saying straight out. Don't mean to insult anybody, but this is the reality of the structure. And right now, you don't have a city staff member that is assigned to getting the Oakland roots positioned. You know it, and I know it. That needs to be straightened out. So again, I'm saying all this in the context of the athletics issue because we're poised yet again to make another mistake because of our structure. Form follows function. We're dysfunctional because we don't have the right form. And so we get what we get. Loss of the Warriors, loss of the Raiders, loss of the A's. What's next? Oh, gee, Oakland Roots Soccer leaves because they couldn't really seem to get a home going, right? Or remember the Oakland Panthers? Quiet as it's kept, people forgot. They left. Why? Because the Coliseum didn't give them a deal that allowed them to grow. My friend Henry Gardner, who is the current executive director of the Coliseum, and I hope he's well, because I haven't met in 2 weeks. I'm beginning 2 months, beginning to wonder if his health is an issue. But the simple fact of the matter is, Henry has to understand that when you're working with a new sports organization, You don't come down like Dracula trying to suck their blood. You provide a place for a position of growth within your facility so that as they grow, then you make more money. But you don't make them pay things that they're not comfortable paying when they're just getting started. They're not rich. Okay. So we lost the Oakland Panthers. Now they're called the Bay Area Panthers. What's that? I don't know. Do you? Bay Area? Okay. Does that mean Marin goes down to see them? I don't, what does that mean? Oakland Panthers was a better one. Yet we just let them go with nary a thought. And that could happen to the Oakland Roots. So again, form follows function. We're dysfunctional because of our form or lack thereof. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. That ends this broadcast.